I just loved it. I love the kickstart. I said on Twitter, I'm like, Kenny is waving a Kickstarter around right now.
His right leg's not getting tired, though. We know that.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Hey, we know the HEP guys and you have been really working hard. And it's, I mean, Larry was, look, Larry was excited you won and all that, but I think he's being like real. He's like, dude, he's like, Kenny has been not complaining. He has been working his balls off. We have been working our balls off. He said his attitude has been great. Your attitude, Kenny's been great. So I feel like this is a super cool deal for everyone involved, yourself included. Like lots of hard work into this win.
Yeah, I'm so proud of them because it's tough, when you have one of the top level guys, and unfortunately, I just like my bike a certain way, and when it is off, I can be pretty special when everything is right for me, and it's also the opposite when I'm not that comfortable. You know what I mean? That I'm just like super average. So I'm proud of them for trusting me, and honestly, not to toot my own horn, but I'm also a little bit proud of myself because it was a big task, believing in your feelings and what you need and following your gut. Like it's no matter what, like of course I had trust that I can make it happen, but to actually make it happen, that's also a whole other story, right? So I just think by doing all these moves that I have done, I was so motivated to, and I really wanted to make this work. Like I really did, and that's actually what Larry told me too, that he was so impressed about. So we have had many late testing days.
Yeah.
And I just think I needed this switch. I needed all this new excitement, and it was a no-brainer for me to put in that work. You know what I mean? So, yes, I haven't been complaining in a sense of like that I'm whining. I have been complaining with motivation to make the situation that we're in better. And unfortunately, with how good my off-season went actually and for how decent of a base setup we had at first, with all the suspension stuff going on, I did make a couple of steps backwards at first. Until like lately, right? Because I was kind of just completely lost again, and we were testing so much. I really had to take in a deep breath and kind of like restart, reset, and then we made some precise changes with Matt. He's Florida based, like that's where he's from, and it's Kyle's old like suspension guy, right? So I'm so proud of him too for working with me like this. He has no ego. Nobody on the team has an ego or anything, so we simply do whatever is best for the bike, and that's honestly. Besides maybe the firepower team, it's the first time that people make it happen for me, like to this extent, It's so rad. So then to finally pull it off, that's why everything was so emotional, because we've had some really hard times behind us, and those were silent, long days, right? Like I wasn't really that vocal about it, nor did I want to be. So then to pull this off, and everybody from that team, it comes from nothing kind of, besides Larry. Larry has had a couple of really good years with Chad and James and all that. But besides that, everybody else is new to winning, and it was so rad for me to be able to deliver their first one. And I know every weekend, even the weekends where I didn't do good, they had that certain supportive, calm feeling, and like they just really care, and that's what I loved about it. So we've just kind of been doing our thing, and it's finally paid off.
It's a little bit like, Davey, for you, like a little bit with Bobby's team on your Suzuki days, a little bit of a privately owned team, maybe everyone kind of not really thinking you guys can win, right? You're coming off a factory ride, that kind of stuff, right? Like a little bit like that.
In a sense, yeah, it's Bobby, his team, he had a lot of funding, obviously, and he had a lot of wins, just from amateur days and small bike stuff, but for me, like me being his first ever 450, that was kind of thing that was pretty cool. Yeah. But again, like with Kenny winning on the Suzuki and with HEP and stuff, Kenny is the biggest name that they've ever had. Yeah. And they're going to bend over backwards to do anything for him. And I love the fact that there is no ego there, like he said. I love the fact that, Kenny's trusting himself and telling them what he wants, and they're listening. Yeah. And that, I like Larry, but that's really hard for Larry to do, and for him to do it, that's it paid off obviously on Saturday. It's pretty cool.
And it's a pure underdog story, right? That's at least how I feel, and I feel like
you're no underdog, Kenny. You're no underdog, bud.
But you know what I mean, like the situation, like it just wasn't. It wasn't handed to or paid, so it's been a lot of work, and they haven't had one yet, and it was cool. It's the same with RCH back in the day, right? Yeah. We had some really cool moments, and this is just another one of those for me personally, one of those historic kind of like nights. That's why that win ranks so high on my list.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. You said this is the biggest. With a couple nights away from that, do you still agree? Is one biggest win for you, or?
Yeah, and it might seem weird from the outside, but I don't know what it was with this one. I've personally, and nobody but me really knows, or maybe the people that are really close to me, I just had a really hard time, this whole last year, and it's not easy, you know what I mean? Just because I've done super well before, and then where I was at and coming back, I don't know. Maybe this stuff doesn't come as easy to me anymore, but I was just proud of coming back, like more so even than from the injuries, actually. I don't know what it was, but I was more proud now coming back and kind of just taking this whole thing serious. And even when the times got tough and my writing wasn't that good and we were still trying to figure things out, just sticking with it and never stopping, even though like sometimes it was like, oh man, like I'm just kind of like chasing my tail a little bit again, but at the same time just sticking with it, making something out of it. And I'm just excited for the next few weeks and everything to come up. I just want to stay calm, but build on what we have, and every weekend is going to be treated the same.
Yeah, Larry was telling me that you found a setting, with Matt working hard, that you found a setting you really liked. I don't know if you ran it this weekend, but they said it was noticeable. Again, this track's so weird at Indy that maybe you went away from it or went softer or whatever, but they said that there was a setting they found that you really, really liked, and they're pretty confident going forward.
Yes, it was front and rear too. Like the front took a little bit because we were a little bit far out the window, and we kind of fed that in. And the same with the shock. I made a little change from press day to race day Saturday morning, and that was something that I kind of had in mind to try this week. It was a tiny, tiny, tiny change, but I also was just riding and I was feeling really good, and I was riding really good on Tuesday and Wednesday. So I just said, screw it, I'm getting more out of doing my motos, really learning the bike and not messing with it, and really learning where it's at, so I can kind of push that extra little bit that I need to win. And so I never tried it, but then after obviously press day and stuff, I'm like, man, come on, I just hate to leave stuff on the table, and I've done that so much this year that I have a certain setting, or we try something for free practice, because that is really the one that we can waste if we go down to waste one, you know what I mean? So I've done that so much this year that I'm very familiar with that, because most of the time when I'm happy, I just leave it, and I really do want to leave it, but I've just been familiar with it, so I was confident and comfortable to do that, and if that wasn't it, then I would have just gone back to my base and been happy with that, so that was kind of the game plan.
Ken Roczen, brought to you by the folks at Renthal, by the way, renthal.com. Please check them out for more information on that. Webb, Coop told me after the race that your speed in the whoops in the main line was unbelievable. He said Kenny was killing that main line, which is not always easy to do, which Davey was telling us before the show, before we got you on. It's not easy to just blitz it through the groove,
Really? That's cool, because I normally struggle with stuff like that. Like I guess it's just the thing when you're just not as comfortable on the bike. Like I feel like I've been all over the place, like trying to stay in a V or kind of weasel my way through the whoops. I've been horrible at that. So that's actually cool that he said that, because it is really tough, especially when it's so grabby, right? Like, I mean, if you're a little bit off center, it'll just throw you left and right, and you're off balance, and you're pretty much screwed,
Yeah.
It was difficult for sure.
Yeah. Also, by the way, 702-586-7857. You got a question for Ken Roczen. We got one here from Skippy. Skippy, go ahead. What's your question for Ken Roczen?
Hey, Kenny. First off, I want to congratulate you for being an incredible father. I appreciate how you let your kid go out and do just crazy, fun, cool stuff. So wanted to compliment you there. I look up to you as a father, as a husband, a lot of things. But second of all, do you, while you're in these moments before your wins, do you sit there and think, damn, these are going to be some of my last wins, or maybe my last win or something like that? Like, do you think about that stuff, and does it make you take in the moment a little bit more now that you're further in your career?
Great question. First off, actually, big time thank you on all the compliments. I love that. I always try to share how I raise my kids or whatever, because we're pretty open with that, with just having fun with them, and we're a believer. And when you have kids, you just, I don't know, that doesn't, everybody, I think the stigma is when you have kids, you got to start settling down and really stop what you're doing, when I don't feel like you have to at all. We kept doing all our things. So thank you. I appreciate that big time. And I would,
Yes, sir.
I would lie if I said that I was, while I was going through these last few rounds, I'm like, man, I cannot screw this up, because who knows when you're going to be in this position again. Like, just in a way, I've been so far away from it, but at the same time, it feels familiar. Like, I've been in this position a lot, so I was actually comfortable with the pressure from behind. And but yeah, I see what you're saying, because for me, that's why this win celebration is so big too, because they just haven't been coming around as often as for like Eli Tomac, for example. So I think that every single one of these wins should be massively celebrated, because I don't think it's celebrated enough. It's come down to making it through the finish, do a fist bump, go to the podium, do your interview, and be done. At least that's kind of like what I feel like. When there are other sports, and surfing in particular, actually, I think that every single win or final is almost treated like a championship, like it's just this stoic, because it is so hard. I talked about it with Sexton. It is so hard to get on the podium nowadays, because everybody's so good, and with the crappy start, it's just makes that really difficult. So I just take that, or appreciate that a lot more nowadays than I used to, I feel like.
Thanks, Skippy. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Good.
Yeah.
Sorry, long answer.
No, it's good. No, it's great stuff as always. The one guy that you maybe don't want behind you late in the Supercross with that's all gnarly was Justin Barcia.
Yeah.
Did were you waiting for it, Kenny? Were you thinking, oh shit, like?
My thought process to the T is when I saw, because he had pretty vibrant colored gear on.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I knew that it was Justin, and I specifically focused on not letting him get too close to me in the later stages in the race, for just, he's a great racer and he's aggressive, and I just tried to delay that process, or delay. At first of all, I was actually really surprised with how fast he was going. Holy shit. I mean, I think the last couple of weekends, which is great for him. I think he really needed that too, and that's good for him. So yeah, it's just, that's a situation you just try to avoid at all costs.
Did you panic at all missing the on-off?
Yes, I did. Somebody, and I feel like the only reason we came in this position to begin with is just I feel like personally I got a little bit unlucky with lappers, where I kind of had to check up, where I had to roll the on-off, or just something that is like we were fighting for tenths every single lap, so that made that a lot worse, and he got really close to me, and he took that inside line to step on, and I think he had so much forward momentum that when he saw me bobble, he probably thought that I was going to cut to the left and he was going to jump into me maybe, because that maybe would have been his opportunity to step off to the inside and just kind of push me out of the way. So once that was done, I mean, I got over left on the triple and tried to take that angle of the turn super sharp, and you just kind of, I put the track in sections these last few laps, right? Like I always do it section by section, because there are so many difficult areas. Like after the start, that short little tabletop, like you had all these like red zone areas that could be super detrimental right there to crash. And that was the whoops. Like I sectioned it up, and that's kind of like what I did there as well in the last lap with him being behind me. I really wanted to get past the whoops, like just make it clean through the whoops, because he is super close behind me. And then I made that mistake, and right after that, it was just like corner by corner, and it was nerve wracking for sure.
You greased the finish line corner for sure. That was great. Yeah, that was easy.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking you weren't tripling in on the rhythm before the whoops, and he was. And then,
I don't know why.
Yeah, I don't know either. I was going to ask you, did you watch that on Dartfish or anything? Like, is there a reason why?
Yes and no. What the 3-3, and I really don't like singles into the turn, especially with how big those 4-footers were from people casing it and whatnot. So it really upset the rhythm. So in the heat race, I think it was Chase maybe, or I saw a couple of people going 2, 3, and then 2 into the turn. I felt like that got a lot better rhythm. So whatever gave me the best rhythm on the track is what I did. But unfortunately, I just stuck with it maybe a little bit too much. Afterwards, I was like, why the heck didn't I do that? Because I did that all day. I literally did that all day, and then just not in the main event. And I just stuck to that one rhythm the whole time. And I agree, I should have maybe mixed it up to see if that made a dent in the gap, maybe from not letting it come so close. But I mean, it is splitting hairs, but at that point, those hairs, it matters, right?
Well, especially when Barcia can go wide open off the single into you in the turn. So
totally.
we were talking about that before. And then also by the mechanics area, you were swinging wide and making that on-off work for you pretty good too, or all the way over. And then, you know what I mean? Like you were doing it.
Yeah,
pretty
I
good.
ended up. That was a spot that Larry and I actually talked about because in practice, Chase did that really nicely. After the mechanics, he kind of swung out wide, landed on the tabletop wide, and then cut to the inside. And I was making it really square. I hugged it tighter. I squared up the turn, jumped on top, and it just looked super notchy, and then off, and then squared it up again. And so I ended up wanting to go a little bit further out. But in that berm, you kind of had the berm was built with like a roller almost in it. So if you just stuck to the regular berm, it kind of upset it too much for how the ruts were. I didn't really like that. So I weaseled my way kind of around it and stayed kind of on the inside and pushed it over. Like, I don't know, just kind of like this weird thing that I did. I was actually thinking about that while riding because I didn't hit the turn, didn't feel like head on, you know?
Yeah.
So then I just swung out rider and I felt like clearing that tabletop was going to be smoother around the whole track and singling it out, you know, because those on-offs with that little room that you have, the offs, like it's really hard to make the turn after, you know. People case those singles too, and they become so steep and sharp that you really can't land on the backside of it, you know. So I tried to avoid that and just try to clear the tabletop at all costs.
Hey, smoother's faster, man. Smoother's faster, especially that weekend.
I agree.
Especially at
and
that
you
race.
want to stay loose. You want to stay loose on a track like that, right? It's very easy to tighten up, which luckily I didn't have any problems with that. But I think it's important that you pick out parts that you think that are difficult and you go for something that overall, especially when you're leading, you don't have to battle anybody in front of you and get roosted and hold your breath. So I just stuck around whatever was the smoothest around the whole track that I can do every lap.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you're leading, right? You can get in a flow, I guess, right? And
yeah, but I mean, at that, I feel like on Saturday, Barcia had the upper hand when it came to figuring out what was faster or slower. You know, watching Kenny in the lead and then him obviously catching you, knowing where he's faster and knowing where you're faster. I feel like he could have capitalized on that. But I don't know, you stepped up. You started cutting the corners down and rolling from inside and going out, which was obviously keeping him from doing what he loves to do. But also you weren't losing any time doing that. It was honestly, dude, like I texted you that night, obviously. So you saw that I was pumped for you. But it was a surprise when it came to you winning for sure, but it wasn't at the same time because that's where you should be. And I've told you that, God, I don't even know how many times I've told you that. But no, and Barcia catching up and riding with you, to me, was the bigger surprise. But, yeah,
I agree. I mean, he was really fast. But I heard that Daytona, I just couldn't really see so much because I was that far back in the pack. But I heard that he was riding really well there as well. And so, that's good for him because I think he's had some rough years behind him as well. So seeing him, he normally doesn't have that speed like that, right? Like he's always a good racer because he defends his spot and he fights for whatever position he's in. So that's what makes him a really good racer. But when it comes to just the pure speed like that, that was
in the last 2 weekends, he didn't have to really fight anyone, you know. So, but for you, honestly, dude, like I was pumped to watch you win and get the monkey off your back and hopefully
it's great for the series.
Yeah,
it's great for the series.
And I've been a Kenny fan for a long time. And I do hope to see Kenny come back to Detroit, Kenny come back to, Atlanta and Seattle and all those weekends. And I've told you since 2014 or 15 that, this is where you belong.
Yeah, I really need to work on, I really want to dial in my starts a bit more. I mean, it's been a lot lately with testing, right? So I wouldn't say that I've neglected my starts a little bit, but I would just like to hone in a little bit more on making my technique a little bit more certain, like that I'm doing the same thing every single time instead of lifting my body up or dumping the clutch a little bit. I just feel like I need to be a little bit better. I'm normally a good starter and I just I've not really been in the front three spots, which I feel like is where you want to be ideally to be able to win.
In this class, 100%.
Yeah, sure. Daytona's a different weirdo track, but not much was going. Once you didn't get the start there, that was it. See you later. By the way, you didn't race last year at Indy, but you won all 3 races during the COVID year. So you're on a 4-race Indianapolis win streak.